Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the second Transportation and Environment Committee work session on Bill 3220, focused on single-use straws. This legislation was introduced on July 21st by Council President Katz at the request of the County Executive. At the first work session on October 12th, the committee made a few recommendations. One was to remove the authority to do a waste reduction program in regulation. Another was to remove PLA from the list of allowable straws. A third was to clarify that food service businesses are not required to verify a customer's medical or disability needs before obtaining a straw. And a fourth was to allow a food service business to provide a straw in self-service dispensers and for carryout, delivery, and drive-through sales after the business asks the customer if one is needed. And finally, we asked the department to require an educational campaign to get the word out to our businesses and our public about the requirements of the new law. So today we'll be discussing and making recommendations on a few additional issues. Thanks so much to Director Ortiz and Chief Cow for being here from DEP. Many thanks to Ms. Wellens for another terrific staff packet. And as has been announced, I know we've been joined by Melvin Thompson, the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs for the Restaurant Association of Maryland, who is available to answer questions from my colleagues as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Wellens. Thank you again for a great packet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, council members. Good afternoon. As the chair said, and as you all know, you've already done a lot of work on this bill. The committee previously considered it and made the recommendations that Council President, Vice President Hucker just enumerated. So I'll take you through the packet, just a few remaining issues or issues that you might want to kind of drill down and revisit based on further information that's been provided. First listed in the packet is further clarification regarding disability rights. And as you know, it has been the intent of the committee as well as the intent of DEP and the drafters of this legislation to make clear that this bill would not be implemented in a manner that would prevent individuals with disabilities or just individuals who need a plastic straw for a medical or disability related reason. The intent is not to prohibit them from obtaining one. The intent also is not to require restaurants to engage in sort of a back and forth questioning with an individual about the nature of their medical needs or their disabilities. So in this first section under item 1, there's some language recommended by staff. It's on, starting on page 3 of the staff memo. And this language has been vetted with the Commission on People with Disabilities and also with DEP who are agreeable to it. So there are some amendments there. The first amendments to lines 39 through 43, clarify that in the posting that restaurants are required to provide to customers, that the posting would include that aspect that the customer is not required to disclose any disability related or medical information. And then lines 49 through 55 would be amended to again make that clarification that that the restaurant must provide a plastic straw to a customer who requests one for a medical or disability related reason and must not inquire into the nature of the disability or medical information of the customer. And then lastly, there would be some amendments to lines 67 through 69 that would make explicit that DEP would be consulting with the Commission on People with Disabilities regarding the outreach campaign. And this language is also agreeable to both the Commission and to DEP, and staff would recommend those clarifications. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Questions for my colleagues. I just had one about how this would work exactly. It seemed very well intentioned and well thought out to me. But so I'm a customer. I request a straw. They're not within reach or whatever, immediately available. Do I just say I need a straw, or do I have to disclose that I need a straw because I have a disability?
Well, the intent here is that you wouldn't have to get into a discussion about your disability. So, and that's, I mean, it's a wonderful question, because that's exactly what we've been trying to think through, is like, as a practical matter, how will this happen? So the individual isn't required to disclose the nature of it, but, the person could simply say, I need a plastic straw, and I'm entitled to one. I mean, they wouldn't really need to elaborate necessarily, especially if there's a sign in the required posting that says, individuals with disabilities can have the plastic straws upon request.
Right.
So I would envision it as the customer saying, I need a plastic straw for medical reasons, or just I need a plastic straw, which I'm entitled to under the law, and that there would be no further discussion. They would just be provided with the straw.
Right. Those are different things. Director Ortiz, how do you see this playing out? Is the customer allowed to just say, I need a straw?
Yeah, we didn't want to micromanage that interaction. So we like the language that Ms. Wellen suggested. We also agreed that we work with the commission going forward on how to educate restaurants on managing this issue. But for the most part, we didn't want to get too involved in the details, and really wanted to defer to the customer making the request, how they want to make the request, and that restaurants are encouraged to comply with the spirit of the law, with the sensitivities that you would expect. So we felt this language was good for now. We'll continue to work with the commission and other advisors so that we can implement it in a way that's thoughtful.
Right. So to be clear, not only would a customer, the business must not inquire into the nature of the disability, a customer doesn't have to give a reason, the way I read this. Is that right?
Yeah, the way that we thought about it, and I'd be interested in Ms. Wellens, and invite Ms. Ko to time, and that a person knows what they want and why they want it. We'll defer to them on how to express it. We would expect that most people would say, I'm sorry, excuse me, can I get a plastic straw or flexible straw for a condition I have or for a personal need? But whether they say that or not, we didn't want to micromanage that. But we expect that this is not an unusual request for that customer, that's probably something they deal with a lot, and that restaurants likewise probably receive those requests as well. So that's how we thought playing out. But like I said, we'll monitor this and work closely with stakeholders in the disability community. Ms. Ko, is there anything you wanted to add? Or Ms. Wellens, did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered it, Adam.
Okay.
It's just kind of no questions asked and no, discussion or debate. If someone says, oh, could I get a plastic one?
Right. I think that's what we want, like an absentee ballot. Councilmember Reamer.
Good analogy, I suppose. However, just to be clear, though, a person is only allowed to get one under the clause that is the disability allowance. Am I thinking about that the right way? Like, we are making them available to everyone because there's part of the law that contemplates people with disabilities should be able to ask without having to justify. So, there's no easy way to do this, and so it's a general allowance as a practical matter. But a server could, if they wanted to, say, sure, you're allowed to accept, request one under, the disability clause or something like that, but why would they bother? So, okay. I mean, I've generally been comfortable with the request nature of it. There's no easy answers here, but okay. Thanks.
Councilmember Glass.
Yeah, I appreciate Councilmember Reamer, trying to dive into that original intent kind of language and agree with him. And I'll just share with you that about 2 weeks ago, I went to a fast food place to get a vegetarian sub. And when I got the meal, I got my plastic cup that they gave me, and the cashier gave me a straw, and I gave it back, and it was already plastic straw wrapped in plastic, right? And I gave it back, and he looked at me like stunned, and then he gave it back to me, and then I gave it back to him. I was like, I don't want the straw. And he just looked at me, and I said, thank you, and I walked away. And so that's a real story. And so there's a lot of education that we're going to have to do here. And I think the simple, to Councilmember Reamer's point, the act of reprogramming our society to not automatically give the straw is going to be what I think makes this ultimately successful. And clearly we don't want to pry into people's health situations, which is why it creates this somewhat gray area. But I think it will work out for the best, because it'll require people to think about their actions. And ultimately that's what we're trying to do here, make people use less plastic. So
I agree. I think we had tens of thousands of similar conversations when the bag ban was enacted, the 5-cent deposit. And they continue to be had. And this is additionally complicated because it involves a disability issue. And I think I personally, I feel like the only safe place for the government to be is any resident that requests one can have one, and no business is allowed to ask why you want one. Businesses are going to have to provide them, as the new language says. And, most customers, I don't think will request them, but any customer who wants one won't have to get into why they want it. I don't see how we as a government can require anything else. So Ms. Wellens, your language accomplishes that. Everybody's fine with that then, without objection? Okay, great. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So the issue number 2 identified in the staff memorandum is deals with specifically delineating the types of straws that would or would not be permitted. So the DEP has suggested that the only straws that should be permitted, putting aside the issue of the plastic straws for individuals with disabilities, in general, the only straws that should be permitted would be marine degradable, home compostable, or reusable. The way that you currently have the law drafted is that the straws could be reusable or home compostable, but we haven't defined home compostable. The Restaurant Association of Maryland has raised the point that home compostable is not a term with which the industry is familiar, that this would be difficult to implement for restaurants. You can see that there are 2 proposed definitions, one for home compostable and one for marine degradable, that you can see on page 4 of the staff report. And essentially what they have in common is that the idea, and DEP can speak to this much better than I can, but the idea is that we know that a lot of straws will be littered, and we want to make sure that those will degrade in the natural environment, whether that be they end up in water or they end up on the ground. Some straws that are technically, would count as compostable, including the PLA or bioplastic straws, are degradable only if or compostable only if they're composted in an industrial facility. So that wouldn't cover the littered straws. So I think that's the angle DEP's coming from. So they would suggest amending the bill so that the straws must be marine degradable, home compostable, or reusable, and as those terms are defined here. And again, the Restaurant Association has argued that home compostable in particular is not really a term that they're familiar with or that would be easily applied. And they've made the point that marine degradable is defined under the American Society for Testing and Materials, ASTM international standards, whereas home compostable does not have a direct counterpart in ASTM. The department, the DEP has pointed out that there is a home compostable definition under Maryland law, and that it references a specific industry moniker, I guess, or designation, which is called the OK Compost Home Certification Standard, adopted by BINCOT. That's under the Maryland law, and DEP is proposing to put that in the definition of home compostable. Again, the Restaurant Association has pointed out they don't believe that that the state definition is really comparable, because the state definition isn't, it relates to marketing and when you're allowed to advertise yourself as being home compostable. So it's a little bit of a, it's used in a different context. So, I mean, I know this is obviously, it's a complicated issue. The other issue I'd point out is there's been discussion about how expensive straws would be for restaurants to implement these new standards. DEP conducted very exhaustive research, which you can see as an attachment to the staff packet, showing there's just a pretty wide gamut of price ranges for all of the different types of straws. I don't know if DEP wishes to make any supplemental comments.
Director Ortiz or Chief Gale.
Well, I'll start, and then I invite Eileen to chime in. So on the first part concerning the definitions, Mr. Chairman, this is, what we maintain is really just a clarification and a sort of focus on the spirit of the 2016 law. Councilman Reamer and others were very forward thinking with the notion, the concept that, whatever, that this material, once it's in the environment, will last in the environment for 100 or 200 or 500 years, that it breaks down in the environment. And a few years ago, I think our common understanding of the word compostable meant exactly that, what we would commonly know as biodegradable. But as it turns out, this is an area that's evolving, and it's only compostable under these very narrow circumstances, like Ms. Wellen said, when it actually gets into an industrial facility. There's more and more material going into those types of facilities, so that's great, but the vast majority is not. So it's really not going to meet sort of the spirit of that law, that if the stuff does end up as litter, it's just not there forever, that it's able to break down. So marine degradable addresses, this material when it's in the water, that it breaks down there, but we could not find an adequate definition in the ASTM for if it's on land. So I think the definition that we work with the committee to develop, the home compostable, I think makes common sense. I think when most of us hear the term compostable, that's really what we think, that it breaks down in the natural environment. So, a lot of products are labeled compostable now when in fact they don't break down in the environment. And, Mr. Chairman, I would say that when they know that it's only in these narrow category of facilities, but that's what Stephen Colbert would call truthiness. Truthiness. Yeah, it's kind of compostable, sort of, but only in this, in this 1 in 100 chance that it's going to end up there. And we just don't think that's really the spirit of where that Montgomery County law from years ago was, or where we need to be as a forward-thinking jurisdiction. And regarding the pricing, there is an attachment showing a wide range. We had a great conversation with Melvin and a representative from the Chambers of Commerce. We know that there's a different price points, different quality, different types of products. So, we can't say that a comparable or similarly comparable type of product is going to perform the same way that plastic does, but we do know that there are alternatives out there. And we know that lots of businesses are already using them. I have in front of me a handful of these that I've just collected around Montgomery County. They're paper straws. They're being used by some of our favorite places. So we know it can be done. It can be managed. And actually the suggestion to get rid of PLA in the law, which is the next part of the staff report, actually came from restaurants. That was pointed out to us because we did, our first draft didn't include that prohibition. They were like, hey, you guys really missed something here. So that came from restaurants that are already doing it. so we know it's possible. And then finally, not to ramble on, but the emphasis of the education campaign, for Councilman Glass's point, and it, something that we agree with the chambers and restaurant association, that education is really important, and that it's required only upon request, so that we begin driving down the demand for straws, period. The fewer times that straws are being, thrown at customers that don't need them, like Mr. Glass's experience, the less that's going to cost a restaurant. So that's a little bit of a wordy answer, but I did want to speak to this, this nuance with the compostable, that it means what it sounds like when we hear it. And number two, we're going to work to get these costs down by just getting rid of these unnecessary straws.
Councilman Reamer.
Thanks for that. That's very helpful. I've noticed the growing preponderance of, for example, compostable utensils, and I've wondered, what is the value of that? How would they actually get into the compost stream? So it sounds like you can't put those in your backyard compost, most likely. So maybe if you're in a jurisdiction that has industrial scale composting, City of Tacoma Park maybe, then you could put them in. But otherwise, from an environmental perspective, it's going to end up in the trash, and it's, who knows if it's any better or worse really than the traditional plastic. That's really interesting. Question I have is, what is the difference in terms of universal products between the marine degradable and the backyard compostable? Do we really need the backyard compostable? If it creates confusion for the restaurants, are there sufficient products available with marine degradable? Does marine degradable just meet the same objectives that we need to meet? It seemed to me like it would. But I don't know. I don't know these materials. So, do we really need the backyard compostable, or is anything that would be marine degradable automatically going to be backyard compostable, and therefore we could just use the marine degradable designation that apparently has an understandable standard, that might be easier for the businesses. That was what I was taking away from the business letter, was the marine degradable standard would be fine from their perspective, relatively speaking, and the backyard compostable only creates confusion. So do we need it or not, Director Ortiz?
Yeah, that's a good question. We had this exact same kind of discussion and debate among ourselves, and we landed that we thought that providing the home compostable standard might actually make things clearer. People understand that stuff breaks down in the backyard or in the woods probably easier than they do marine degradable. I don't have the scientific background to say that everything that degrades in the ocean can also degrade on the land. I'm not sure about that, but I think that it underscores the point and addresses kind of the two places where plastics end up. A lot of it ends up in the oceans and the waterways. We're all familiar with that, and a lot of it ends up on the side of the road or in the land. So no matter what, we wanted to make sure that no matter where it ended up in the environment, it wasn't there for very long. So we thought the two standards would actually help, would just kind of underscore the point and then might cover anything. At the end of the day, what's the rub here? What does this mean? This just means that paper straws are the best product out there. They work. There's also products made out of noodles, literally made out of pasta noodles. That would work. And then there's some made out of bamboo. So there's materials that just common sense would tell you they break down in both places. But we'll continue to provide guidance on products and the type of products that we think are compliant. But it's a great question. We went back and forth, as you can tell, but we landed that it was better to cover both land and water.
Okay. Thanks.
That you, in an effort to simplify things, that you thought it was better to include it. What do you think about the MRA's email saying that the OK Compost standard is mostly used in the EU, not used in America, and that, as you said, we have no ASTM classification for it. How will a restaurant I mean, you say common sense, but how will a restaurant know I'm buying something that is not going to get me fined by DEP?
Well, I think that, it's incumbent on us to communicate, what kind of materials and what kind of products are compliant. Our partners at Our Last Straw, that's a coalition of local businesses. A lot of them are based or were started in Montgomery County, so they can provide that technical assistance as well. So, and then finally, there's not a material definition, but there will be soon, because this area is just growing, with just our consciousness, our interest in composting. So we're going to need new vocabulary anyway. I think, frankly, this is kind of new to the Restaurant Association and even new to us, because we're identifying a need and trying to fill it. And, as often the case, Montgomery County is sort of on the cutting edge. We're creating vocabulary because we're trying to talk about something specific to address a real environmental and social problem. So I get all that, but I think we need to move ahead. And I think that, what we've suggested here, and I really am grateful to Ms. Welland. She's the one who really kind of wordsmithed this to make it work. I think this gets us there.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. We're always glad to be on the cutting edge, but if we're not, we're glad to learn lessons learned elsewhere. Can you remind me, what are the other jurisdictions that have taken this action?
I'll defer to Ms. Welland. I see you reaching, so I'm talking too much.
I'm sorry, and the ones that I am aware of are the District of Columbia. Although the District of Columbia does allow the bioplastic PLA straws. The city of San Francisco has banned the PLA straws, and as has Prince George's County.
Right. And did you, Ms. Welland, look into the language that they use for their definitions?
I don't believe that they have the home compostable definition, but I'm not 100% positive on that. I apologize.
So I was looking at the home compostable standards and the citing of the VINCOT OK Compost Home designation. And actually, the state of California does use that. Several of the California jurisdictions use that. Prince George's also references that as well in their recently passed legislation. So, it's definitely being cited and referred to more and more. ASTM is a U.S.-based testing and standards certification organization, and VINCOT is a European-based one. Right. But it definitely is being used and cited much more.
I didn't know about VINCOT, but I was surprised. Do we not need any reference to products that are certified by BPI, the Biodegradable Products Institute? I thought they were the largest certifier, third-party certifier of compostable materials.
Well, and we did look. We were looking at all sorts of standards, and for home compostable, we really felt that the VINCOT language was the one that fit the best. And of course, it is also already cited in COMAR, Maryland law regulation.
VINCOT is?
Yes, VINCOT's OK compostable home.
Right. Because of which law? How did it get there?
It's in COMAR. It is, let's see, in the packet. It's Maryland Code, the Environment Title IX.
I mean, it was because of Prince George's straw ban that introduced.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I don't know when it originally got in there. I'm saying sure. It's cited. It's in both of those.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, that'll be helpful. Okay. Thanks. And so, just going back to Mr. Ortiz's earlier point, if I'm a restaurant owner and I want to know which straws to buy through your public education campaign, you'll provide me with a list, I'm hoping, of brands that are available on the market that are going to pass muster with our new law. Is that right?
We're used to providing that kind of service.
Right. Okay, great. So nobody has to worry about running afoul of it. Okay, great. Anything else on this topic?
The other thing I would just add is that, you know, as with the previous bills, when we do the research, we also reach out to the vendors and suppliers of this kind of material. And so, you know, we, of course, do our own research, but then we also kind of develop synergies working with them so that we kind of grow the list of possibilities.
Councilmember Hucker, if I may just add that, just to reiterate, with respect to the Maryland counterpart, the Maryland definition, the Restaurant Association did point out that Maryland law is not, of course, it's not, you know, banning things that are not home compostable. It's about marketing and labeling things that are home compostable. So it's not exactly an apples to apples. I do think that the fact that they've defined it and as DEP has pointed out, the fact that other jurisdictions are starting to use that VNCOT standard, you know, should help cut down on any confusion about what can be used and what can't.
I agree. Okay. Colleagues, anything else? Oh, go ahead. So go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I just also wanted to point out, just because in case it wasn't clear, that I clarified with the Restaurant Association right before this meeting that although they're fine with the marine degradable, they would also want compostable still included, just not home compostable, but just generic compostable. That might be clear already. Just wanted to make sure that everyone had the full information.
Councilmember Glass.
So words matter, and I appreciate Director Ortiz saying that, you know, our vernacular is evolving, right? And so I'm getting a little tripped up on the term home compostable, because as I'm thinking about like the life of a straw, right? And I don't know, I'm sure there's a book or plenty of children's books, right, about the life of a straw, and it ends up in a stream or something like that. But the reality, I think, here is the restaurants and you know, restaurants, whether they're sit down or fast food, are giving straws out to people who are then, I'm going to guess, a large percentage, an overwhelming percentage, are being consumed and used in the facility, in the restaurant themselves, and being thrown into the trash. And then the second largest amount are probably fast food. So they're in the car, they're probably being thrown into the bag and then thrown into the trash, whether they're at home or some other receptacle. And so I'm just trying to figure out the utility of this home compostable standard, trying to think who's, you know, what percentage are going to be using that. Yes, I have a compost bin next to my house, but as I just shared, I don't really take straws. I don't use them. So it's not like I'm going to be saving my straws and going into my backyard and putting them into my composting where my fruits and vegetables and all the other things that I put in there are. So explain this to me, why we're talking about this one point when I'm trying to figure it out. Director Ortiz.
Director. And this is a caveat. While you're clarifying that, can you clarify, because it sounds like you've thought about this, why home compostable is preferable to just compostable, if that's something that the MRA and others didn't have a problem with, and if it's because of the use in the applicability of only industrial composting facilities. We get that, but wouldn't we accomplish that by just banning the PLA straws, which we intended to do? Anyway, go. Sorry.
No, thanks. Great. So I hear you that even well-intentioned people are most likely not going to take straws and put them in their backyard compost pile. Like that's the greater concept was, you know, the vernacular is changing, but what we would commonly consider biodegradable. That's a better term in common understanding. That, right, it may not end up in the compost pile, but it'll end up on the side of the road. We really care about what's ending up on the side of the road. That's really what we're concerned about. Unfortunately, the ATSM definition of biodegradable also includes industrial compostable, so we couldn't use that word. We went with home compostable just because that it captures the concept, even though you're pointing out a little bit of an awkwardness with the term backyard, like totally get that. But the definition that Ms. Wellens has produced is consistent with the COMAR definition and consistent with what Prince George's is doing, and apparently the San Francisco example, which I didn't know about until today. So the definition works. I agree that home compostable is a little bit confusing, but it seemed like the best way to get to this sort of roadside degradable standard. We can start a new term, roadside degradable, but we found that just biodegradable, we think, just didn't cut it because for whatever reason, at the national level, there are these not helpful technical definitions.
Well, and I appreciate that because you just really explained what the heart of this conversation is, right? What we're really talking about, as you just said, is trying to figure out how we do right by the straws that are thrown out of the car or that are in the streams, on the sides, on the beds, whatever it is, and how to make them biodegradable or better for the environment, if there is any way. Oh. So it might be changing that for now, changing the change, right, to more tightly define what it is we're trying to accomplish here. Okay, I yield back to Chair Hawker, who has more good questions.
I don't know about that, but so can you clarify again, why is home compostable preferable to compostable?
Sure. I have an example here.
Given that we're not introducing PLA straws into the mix.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Is that now an unnecessary decision that overly complicates things because it adds confusion, makes the MRA unhappy when compostable might be clearer and simpler, and we're already banning PLA straws?
I see what you're saying. I saw Eileen took her mute off. Eileen, you look like you have a thought. Do you have a thought about this issue?
No, I was just going to point out, I mean, compostable, again, when we talked about it, those are compostable at a facility where the temperatures of the compost piles goes way up to 140 degrees plus, whereas the definition of compostable home, those are materials that only require getting to between 68 degrees and 86 degrees temperature to break down. But that was prior to your pointing out that if we're taking PLA out of the mix, does that, do we really need to go into that distinction or not?
Because it's conceivable. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to get into the nitty gritty of the language a little bit because I think that part of the issue might be is if what the committee did last time was to delete PLA as an acceptable alternative. But I think that you could read the provision to say, even though we've taken out PLA as something enumerated that we're allowing, you could read it. You could read the language to say something compostable is PLA. Therefore, I think if we really want to ban PLA, I think it has to be more of a prohibition on PLA instead of just removing it from the list of acceptable items to make sure it's really banned, if that makes sense. And obviously, yeah, the PLA issue and the home compostable are closely related. So if you want to just ban PLA, I think we just need to. That's great, but we would just want to tighten up the language to make sure that it's really banned, or the definition of home compostable coupled with removing PLA from the list of acceptable types of straws should get to that same goal. So
I'm okay with an explicit ban on PLA if that was, I think that's consistent with our intention. So we're creating and as you said, Eileen, it's in COMAR, but would it be also simpler just to say compostable in a residential compost plan rather than creating a new term of art?
Yeah, we also kind of went around on that because we had thought that just qualifying compostable by inserting the word home. It kind of the same as what you're saying. Initially, we had actually thought that might suffice. And then there were some comments that, well, but there's no definition of home compostable. Exactly. So then we went forward trying to define home compostable.
You wouldn't have to if it were just clear you were talking about compostable in a residential, in Councilmember Glass's residential compost pile.
No one would know what that was.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, Councilmember Reamer, go ahead. Sorry.
It's an important discussion. I see the value of inserting this new certification as starting to actually try to put some teeth into the whole issue of what compostable means. Mm-hmm. I think that's the problem is at the moment, companies are able to say what they think it means. And, it just means different things. It's one of the whole problems in this whole sector is got companies saying things are recyclable. Turns out it only means they're recyclable in 2 places in America that have used industry-funded recycling equipment. And, compostable, I wish if we had a definition that was a standard practice in the country, this wouldn't really be all that difficult. We don't. We're reaching here to a new criteria. I think this, to me, gets back to this whole issue of marine degradable. It sounds to me like restaurants and retailers have a industry norm standard to use, which is this other one that is the ASTM and the marine degradable. If I'm understanding it correctly, this compostable, standard is not widely in circulation at this stage. Retailers may ask their suppliers about that, and their suppliers will say, we don't know what that is, or we've heard a little bit about that, but we don't have any products that we know match that. But if they are supposed to say, well, you restaurant figure out with your supplier whether this product is home compostable, that's not going to work. Like that's not fair to the restaurant. So it seems to me that introducing this new criteria is a step forward in trying to regulate the sector. It as an early adopter, there's a little bit of an issue there. At the same time, the alternative standard sounds like it's widely available and widely understood. So I'm not sure that it's really a problem. That's what I'm, deducing here from this conversation is that I'm not sure there's really a problem with adding this new one. And over time, now I guess the real problem might be if there is a new standard that gets created in 2 years that becomes the industry standard for home compostable that we like, we're going to have to amend the bill.
Right.
And that kind of gets back to another issue we've talked about that I do think we ought to figure out is how to delegate a little bit more of this authority, to DEP. But I think, Chair Hucker, you're making a good point that, hey, we're just banning PLA, and as a practical matter, it's a non-issue. I can see that. I think if I'm understanding, DEP is wanting us to start using this new mark. And it doesn't sound to me like it's a particular problem, and the industry will just need to use the other one.
Right. Eileen, how you said home compostable is defined in COMAR now?
They cite that VinCot, yes.
Oh, they do?
Standard, yes. They cite the VinCot OK Compost Home certification currently.
Okay. So, that puts us on pretty solid ground. And in any case, your average restaurant owner is going to refer to DEP's list of, they're not going to look up an ASTM standard that's not there. They're going to look at your list and say, okay, I need to buy one of these ones, right?
Yeah, I think they refer to our information and then they talk to their vendors and try and, find the least expensive option
Sure.
that is similar.
Right. I would just encourage, I think we might know enough to go forward. It doesn't feel like we have like the ideal solution here. And I got to believe even, and I don't know enough about One Last Straw or anything else, any of these other industry groups, but I mean, my own experience just traveling to coastal areas, going on vacations to Florida and Georgia, going to restaurants in Annapolis, there are lots of restaurants already using paper straws. And I know they're not, required, you're saying, by regulation, but there's an awful lot that's out there. And I just think it just seems like there's a fair amount of industry know-how out here already, even in, areas that where they've been voluntarily adopted by individual businesses. I'm a fan of the Four Corners Pub in my district in Silver Spring. I don't think they would consider themselves like a liberal hotbed. And when you go there on the blackboard, it says, save the turtles, you don't need a straw or something on the specials blackboard. And it has for years. So, I feel like we're on solid policy ground, but relying on some of these industries to find out, individual businesses to find out what they're using and helping our businesses know that those products are available, I think would go a long way. Because most individual shop owners don't care about the ASTM standard as much as they care about what do I need to buy tomorrow for my inventory.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
And we, we commit to helping with that research, that, distilling of information and trying to put it out there as much as we can, and working with basically everyone that's involved in making this succeed, really. And, to the point that Mr. Reamer just made, I think things are evolving and changing constantly still. And, as Adam referred to earlier, actually, just since September, doing additional research, there are now also straws that are made from rice and rice flour and tapioca that are actually edible as well as usable. If they tout themselves that way, and they're home compostable, they are marine degradable and edible, and they're gluten free. So every day there's. I asked for some to be mailed. I haven't tried them yet.
All right. We want a full report the next hearing. All right. Members, colleagues, do we have anything else on this? Okay. Without objection, I guess. Ms. Wellens, we're good on that one? Number 2?
Yes. So you'll be implementing the DEP recommendations.
Both definitions, yes, together.
Okay. The next issue relates again to the PLA straws, which you've just discussed. And I'm presuming that based on your decision related to marine degradable and home compostable, that you want to retain a ban on PLA as you recommended at your last session.
I'm seeing heads nodding. I think we're good on that one.
And again, if I could just say the simple fact that both the District of Columbia and Prince George's County have banned those as well, so there would become a that component.
Good point.
Right. I believe that DC still allows the PLA at this time, but yeah, Prince George's has recently banned it. San Francisco has banned it. So, it seems to be somewhat of a trend.
An emerging trend.
Right.
Or forward leaning, as we can say.
3 examples is a trend. 2,
right.
3, yeah, 3 is a trend. Going to be a trend.
Perhaps not a tipping point quite yet, but a trend. Mr. Chair, do you want me to move on?
Please move on to,
Okay.
Nobody else. We're done with 3, so we're on to 4, I think.
Okay, so item 4 is the issue of when to require a customer to request a straw in order to be provided in order for the straw to be provided to the customer. And here we're talking about those straws that are going to be permissible. So the marine degradable, the reusable, or the home compostable straws. When will the restaurant have to say, you know, just here's your straw, whether or not you've asked for one, or when will a customer request be provided? So as we have it, as the bill is currently drafted, the committee's current draft, in a dine-in restaurant, the customer would not have to necessarily request the straw. The restaurant could provide it. But in a drive-through delivery takeout situation, the customer would be required to request it. DEP can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that they would support requiring the customer to request the straw in all of those scenarios, whereas the Restaurant Association has raised the point, and I believe that the local chambers of commerce have agreed with them that there could be some customer service issues related to if you have to request a straw, even, you know, a degradable straw within a drive-through situation, that customers might end up very unhappy if the restaurant forgets to ask them if they want one, or they forget to request one. Then they're driving down the road and realize that, you know, Timmy in the back seat can't drink his drink. So you might want to so one thing you could consider is kind of switching it. So, you know, in the drive-through situation, they could just provide the compostable straw, drive-through delivery takeout. In the dine-in situation, you would have to request one, or you could leave it as you have it now, or you could, you know, require the customer request in all of the scenarios.
Yeah, this all kind of confused me. Eileen or Adam, can you explain why, if I'm in a dine-in restaurant, you don't have the requirement to request a straw? It seems like, yeah, to Ms. Whelan's point, there's plenty of other opportunities to request one if I want one. I'm not going anywhere, but you want to reduce the use of even biodegradable ones. So why not require the customer to, and not just have the restaurant throwing them on the table everywhere, whether they're used or not?
Yeah, so my understanding, and correct me if I'm missing something. So in the dine-in, it's upon request. The onus is on the customer to make the request. For carry-out, drive-through, and those types of like grab-and-go situations, it's the restaurant would ask. So it's just like, hey, do you want to supersize that? Do you want fries with that? Do you want a straw with that? That seemed to get where we wanted to go. And then when it's self-serve, so
I don't think that's right about dine-in, though. I mean, the first sentence in 4 says it's currently drafted based on the bill would permit certain alternatives to plastic straws in dine-in food service establishments, regardless of whether the customer has requested it. Am I reading
That's correct. No, that's correct. The way that it's currently drafted, I don't think that was ever DEP's intent.
The restaurant provides it every time, whether or not the customer has asked for it. Is that what you want?
No, the intent has been that in this all the settings that the straws would be upon request only, and then furthermore, if a customer requests it, then it would be a straw made out of environmentally better materials. Yeah. With the exception of what we had talked about earlier, you know, folks that have special certain needs, medical or disability related. That had been the intent. I think in discussions, there was a request to look at certain applications. One was self-serve dispensers, which we feel that is already sort of a self-regulated way of sort of upon request only, presuming that the customer only takes a straw if they really need or want a straw. And then the issue, the Restaurant Association had brought up the drive-through sales, the curbside pickups, the delivery orders, those situations. whether those could be, from their perspective, whether those situations, could be not subject to upon request only. And from our perspective, so we put forward sort of a compromise position in terms of the drive-throughs, the deliveries, and the curbside orders. And that is that the restaurant kind of proactively asks then, do you want a straw with that? If someone is ordering a beverage or, ordering as they're ordering. And for example, for an online menu, already many restaurants have these little check boxes where, if you want, cutlery, if you want napkins, whatever, you would check the box. So that type of thing.
So can you explain where is that in the bill? 48 to 60, lines 39 to 43?
Yes, sorry, Councilmember Hooker, let me get to the text of the bill. So
I don't see in there the language that says a business may only offer a biodegradable straw upon request, and that a customer may request it.
That's right. So the current language does not require that upon request. Under the current language, as I understand it, the dine-in restaurant could simply provide the degradable straw.
Right. That's what Director Ortiz is saying in this case, saying they don't want.
They don't want that. But that's what you would need to amend the bill if you want to implement the DEP requirement. But somewhat ironically, the current version of the bill that we're working with does say that, does have that upon request requirement for drive-throughs, takeout, carryout.
Yes.
So
can we just stay on the dine-in for a minute? So we'll need additional language. I don't know that we have it today, colleagues, right? But if we don't have the language today for dine-in, unless you want to have language you suggest now that meets what the DEP is looking for and what my colleagues want to pass, it's not in the bill right now.
My takeaway from the intention of all of this is to reduce straw usage and to ensure that the straws that are being used are biodegradable by whatever terminology and by whatever standard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if new language needs to be incorporated or added to ensure that for the dine-in, then such language needs to be drafted.
And I think it would be very straightforward. I mean, I think if you want to do that, it would just be taking lines 56 and 57, where it says a food service business may provide a straw permitted under paragraph B in a self-serve straw dispenser. Okay, wait, maybe I'm looking at the wrong part. I'm so sorry.
You have that, and
we've got that. We've got the drive-through
ability, but
right.
But that's different than a server making a straw available to a customer who requests it only.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I think that it would be then under section B, where you say, except as provided in subsection C, which is the carry-out situations or the self-dispenser situations, a food service business must not provide a plastic straw to customers. Straws provided to customers must be reusable or home compostable, and must be you could add and must be provided to a customer only upon the customer's request. I mean, you might be able to reduce a few words there. I might have said it kind of awkwardly, but I think that's where you would put it.
You'd add that to B, or you'd add it to the exemptions?
No, I would add it to B. because it's not really.
It would say except.
I mean, except as provided as C. I mean, I guess you could add it to C. I think it would be better in B personally.
No, I wasn't. I'm just trying to follow you, but not suggesting
Oh,
it.
yeah.
So it could say a food service business must not provide a plastic straw to a customer except upon request.
No, that would just be left as is. Then it would be the
Okay.
next sentence. Straws provided to customers must be reusable or home compostable and must be provided to the customer only upon the customer's request.
Okay. I think that we also in that line left out marine degradable, which is a qualifying straw, correct?
That's right. So that is the amendments that you just adopted are going to have to be incorporated in this. And so I apologize, but this draft of the bill is your prior committee draft. So it doesn't include everything that you're voting on today.
Okay. So could you read the sentence again? Except as provided in subsection C, a food service business must
not provide a plastic straw to a customer. Straws provided to customers must be reusable, home compostable, or marine degradable, and must be provided to a customer only upon the customer's request.
Colleagues, is that fine?
I wanted to ask about the takeout. We were focusing there for a minute, and then we seemed to kind of move through it.
Right. No, I think we'll get to that in just a second.
Okay.
We're still in the dine-in.
Okay, I wasn't sure if this was covering both of those. Okay,
This was left out.
that's fine. I think that sounds fine.
Okay, great. So, yeah, Ms. Wellens, what's next?
Okay, sorry. So drive-throughs then. The issue of drive-throughs, carry-out, or delivery services, and whether the committee recommends that those be provided to customers only upon the customer's request. Obviously, the restaurant can, prompt the customer, as DBEP suggested, they can ask each customer, do you want a straw, to hopefully minimize, customer service issues. But the concern is
what is the status quo of the legislation before us as far as takeout and carry out and drive-through?
The status quo before you is that a food service business may provide a straw under paragraph B, those, marine degradable, et cetera, to a customer only after asking if a straw is needed if the customer is ordering food for carry-out, delivery, or drive-through sales. So your current status quo is the drive-through customer does need to request it. Well, the restaurant say, do you want a straw? And the person says yes or no.
No. All right. And I would imagine there'll be some issues. People will forget to ask. They'll get up to the window. Then they'll have to ask at that time.
I agree. This is why I wanted to fix the dine-in first earlier in the bill, because I think we have to tighten that up and get to where the DEP wanted to be. But I'm personally okay with allowing the customer to ask, or allowing the restaurant, I guess, flipping the responsibility, allowing the restaurant to ask, do you want a straw with that? Because there is no going back. And, it will result in a lot of unhappy customers and probably restaurants if we...
I think for drive-through, they shouldn't even have to ask, because there's no way you can drink a drink without a straw in a car, right? I've never done, I wouldn't let my kids do it, that's for sure. That would ensure that it would end up all over the seat. What bugs me about it is I think that those are also the straws that are getting littered most of the time.
So you'd allow it for everybody, but leave it up to the restaurant. The restaurant could could ask if they wanted to, but they wouldn't have to.
Let's be honest. If you go to drive-through, you're eating in your car. I think, aren't you almost every time?
You might be picking it up to bring home,
Maybe
especially these days. But yeah, no,
I
often in the car for sure.
I see the evolution of the drive-through drink, basically being what Starbucks has done, and have that little lip at the end, that little opening, so that people can drink it and have
they
it.
can use a totally different product.
Well, necessity, is the mother of invention, and so here we are. And as more communities start putting restrictions in to protect our environment, they're going to have to adapt. We're all going to have to adapt. And so clearly I'm not, a restaurateur, but that answers how we protect a drink and allow it to be enjoyed in a car.
I mean, Starbucks does also still provide straws for many of their to-go drinks. It's not just coffee, when they serve those more elaborate mixed drinks, But I hear what you're saying.
So the one question I have that we're now trying to get into is where the onus and responsibility lies. So if you are a patron going into a restaurant, the server will, no, you have to ask for a straw, right? Or the server will ask you. Regardless, I don't know if it matters here. The server will not automatically give you a straw. Someone has to ask for it. I would like a straw. Can you give me a straw, or would you like a straw? And I presume that would be the same with a drive-through. That if we prohibit automatic handing out of straws, someone's going to have to ask or demand. I don't know if you need that level of detail in the legislation, right? Maybe you do.
I mean, if I can chime in, I agree with you, Councilmember Glass. I don't think we really need to try to put the onus on one party or another. I mean, I'm assuming for customer service reasons, the restaurants will start training their staff, in certain contexts to say, would you like a straw? Especially if it's, a drive-through situation. But obviously it would be sufficient if the customer is the one to speak first and say, I need a straw with that, So I don't know that you need to legislate quite that nitty gritty. I think the important thing is just whether or not the customer request is provided. It could be a customer request after they're prompted by saying, do you want a straw, or of their own volition.
Well, just a finer point, and I defer to the wisdom of the committee. I totally get the nuances here, and these are things that we considered. For the dine-in experience, we wanted the customer to ask. So that's why the upon request. That's how we envisioned it. We didn't envision servers, asking for straws. But again, that's a finer point, and I defer to the committee.
Yeah, I would recommend that we allow the restaurant, the drive-throughs to do what they want to do. Because let's also remember, these products are no longer going to be.
We're banning the bad ones, right?
Exactly. So give them the ability to run a smoother operation if that's how they want to do it, or if they want to save money and make people ask. We're not as worried anymore about the litter,
right?
And recognizing that in a drive-through environment, we understand if you want to just go ahead and put them in there.
Yeah.
What's the downside?
Right. It'll be biodegradable litter is the worst case. Yes. Okay. Is everybody okay with that? Great. Easy peasy. Okay. Ms. Wellens.
Thank you. And the final issue that we've identified in the staff packet for you, or the staff report, relates to effective dates. And DEP had requested that, given the urgency of reducing waste and litter and plastics in the environment, that that there should be kind of a staggered implementation of this bill, and beginning May 1st, 2021, restaurants would be required to start providing straws only upon a customer's request, but that it wouldn't be until 12 months after the bill becomes law that those straws would have to be biodegradable, would have to meet the new standards. But still, the idea would be that you would be starting to reduce the waste by just having straws upon request. We have received comments from the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce, raised a concern. They certainly conveyed to us, I believe it's fair to say in strong terms, that they felt May 1 was just too soon of a date, given the transition that this will require the restaurants to make, and given the fact that restaurants have been, hard hit by our current pandemic. So I hope that makes sense. Please feel free to ask me questions, or DEP might want to speak as well.
I'll just say briefly, thank you. It's, part of the reason why we wanted the phase in was because early in, and I don't want to speak for the chambers, but what I heard them saying is that helping us get the costs down is a priority, an educational campaign, so customers bear the responsibility and are stepping up to the plate. And it's not just small businesses with this demand for straws. So we thought with the phase-in, we can help reduce the amount of straws that restaurants are giving out by having the on-request phase-in period. We'll do a big public push. All of you are familiar with with our work and public education on laws. And then this way, by the time the full ban goes into effect, there'll be less of a demand for straws, hopefully, and then restaurants will be in a better position to make any financial transitions they may have to. So that was our thinking. I guess we just, we kind of put that in guidance from the chamber, but I also hear the chamber has other concerns unrelated to that, but we are trying to be accommodating to that need.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think we all appreciate how difficult these times are for restaurants. We've all voted for millions of dollars in aid to restaurants. We are going to have a very difficult discussion before us tomorrow. But I mean, obviously, this is an issue that many restaurants have adopted voluntarily, and I don't think it's going to cause any restaurant to stay or go out of business. They have much greater challenges ahead of them. This timing is maybe not the best, but I think the most important thing is we're going to continue to focus on the strength of our restaurant sector, and we can certainly. We had good news from Pfizer today. Hopefully a year from now, we're not in this COVID environment anymore. Certainly before the ban goes into effect a year from now, we could have another briefing from you all about how well the run-up is going, and we could reconsider that decision if we go forward with the effective date that's in the bill. Mr. Thompson did text me. I just saw he has a comment about industry supply. If he's still around, Mr. Thompson, do you want to add anything about the availability of these products?
Yes, and thank you very much, Committee Chair Hucker. I just wanted to comment, as part of the discussion regarding industry supply, we did have concerns about our suppliers being able to provide products that meet a new home compostable or OK Compost Home standard. The suppliers were unfamiliar with that standard. They're currently using the ASTM standard, and I was respectful to the committee process. I didn't want to chime in without being asked a question directly, but I did want to make sure that I clarified to the committee that we go to our suppliers to provide those alternatives, and if they don't know what products meet a new standard with which they're not familiar, they can't recommend alternative products. So I just wanted to share that with the committee.
So I didn't know whether that was germane to the previous point or this one, but I think we hear you, and that's why I'm counting on Director Ortiz and Ms. Kao to come forward and through their campaign with a whole list of products that meet the terms of the legislation, so people will know what's compliant and what's not. Okay, so colleagues, any comments on the effective date?
So you're not recommending a change. I can be fine with that. I think, okay.
Same.
I had a question going back to our previous conversation, just wanted to clarify, we were not going to refuse to, we're not going to change the business process for companies that are using it for drive-through. Same goes for takeout. It's all the same, right? Like if the business wants to do that, they're allowed to. Is that what is the statute going to say, Christine?
Well, that was my understanding, Councilmember Reamer, unless the committee tells me differently. That, yeah. And also the and while we're talking about it, the self-serve dispensers, that those would still be permitted as well.
Okay, sounds good. Again, reminds me of the whole thing about banning plastic bags versus charging fees. Like, get what you want, and be happy about it. And what we want is to stop having these products clogging up our streams and our waterways. And so with the shift to the materials that we're going to shift to, we're going to achieve that goal. So let's not get too carried away.
Right. Agreed. Leave it up to the business owner. Is drive-through really THRU?
Maybe Mr. Thompson can weigh in on that.
It's like America doesn't have an E. America.
Okay. Great. So I think that the effective date is without objection as well.
So, and I'm sorry, Councilmember Hucker. So the effective date being the effective date as recommended by DEP, the phase-in approach?
The 2 steps. I think that's
okay.
Right. 91 days and 12 months for the ban.
Okay. So May 1st, 2021 for the upon request, and then the rest of the bill would be effective 12 months after it becomes law. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thanks.
And your public education period doesn't have to wait for the 91 days. Right, DEP? You'll begin that soon.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. We have a bill? Okay, so that's sounds like a unanimous committee recommendation. Great. Seeing some heads nod. All right. Thank you all so much. That was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
You.
Thank you, Melvin. Good job, Christine.